She called me a simple man. Simple because I fixed engines. Simple because I trusted her. She thought grease under my nails meant I was weak. She was about to learn that even the quietest engines can explode. If you're listening to this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. Let me back up and tell you how the life I built over 35 years started to fall apart on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. The smell of old oil and worn tires usually calmed me down. It's the scent of honest work. Problems solved with patience and the right tools. I'm Mark. I fix things. That's who I am. That's what I've always been. But driving home that Tuesday, a different smell filled my truck. Something sharp, metallic. It smelled like fear. I wasn't supposed to be on this side of town. I was supposed to be at the shop, buried in the engine rebuild on Mrs. Gable's old Buick. I'd finished early. I decided to swing by my daughter Sarah's house. I wanted to see my grandson Leo, maybe teach him the difference between a socket wrench and a box wrench. Simple things, important things, but I never made it to the front door. Then I saw it. Parked in the driveway of David, my son-in-law, was my wife Linda's silver sedan. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. The leather groaned under the pressure. Linda was supposed to be at her pottery class, across town. She never missed pottery. She loved the clay, the shaping, the control. A cold knot formed in my stomach, the kind you get when you know an engine is about to throw a rod. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. I didn't pull into the driveway. I couldn't. I parked down the street, under the shade of an old oak tree. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of quiet that hides secrets. I killed the engine. The silence of the suburban afternoon felt suddenly loud. I slipped out of the truck. I moved quietly. Years of working around sensitive machinery taught me how to be silent. I approached the side of the house, near the living room window. It was cracked open, just an inch, enough for the breeze, enough for the truth, and that's when I heard the voices. It was David's voice first. Smooth, arrogant. The kind of voice that sells you something you don't need and makes you thank him for it. Then came the sound that stripped the gears of my life. Linda, my wife of 35 years, laughing. It wasn't her usual laugh, the one she used at dinner parties or when Leo did something cute. This was sharp, cold, laced with something I didn't recognize. It sounded like victory. He has absolutely no idea, Linda, David was saying. His voice dripped with smugness. Mark is so busy fixing everyone else's problems he doesn't see his own life is falling apart. I pressed my back against the siding. The rough texture scratched my palms. My heart hammered against my ribs. A piston about to break free. He's a simple man, David, Linda replied. Her tone was dismissive, casual, like she was discussing the weather. He sees the engine. He sees the grease. He doesn't see the bigger picture. Simple. The word hung in the air. A verdict delivered after 35 years. But that wasn't the worst part. And Sarah? David asked. A hint of impatience in his voice now. She's getting suspicious, asking why I need another loan from her personal savings. My blood ran cold. Sarah's savings. The money I had put aside for her since she was born. They were using my daughter. Leave Sarah to me, Linda said. Her voice hardened. She's weak, just like her father. Weak. The second verdict. I closed my eyes. The world tilted. But the conversation kept going. The nightmare was just beginning. We're almost there, Linda continued. Once Mark signs the power of attorney papers, we're set. Power of attorney. The words landed like a hammer blow. They wanted control. Total control. We leverage the shop, sell the property, and we're gone, David said, excitement creeping into his voice. We just need to keep the illusion going a little longer. Keep telling him he's tired, Linda instructed. That he's forgetting things. He's already starting to believe it. I didn't breathe. They weren't just having an affair. They were dismantling my life. Piece by piece, using my daughter, my sweet, trusting Sarah, as collateral, and they were going to convince the world I was crazy while they did it. The drive home was a blur, green lights and empty streets. The silence in the truck was deafening, broken only by the rhythmic clicking of the turn signal. Click, 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 like a time bomb counting down. I walked into the house I'd built, the house I thought was a sanctuary. It felt like a stage set now. Fake, hollow, every photograph, every piece of furniture. tainted by the poison I had just heard. I looked at a picture of Linda and me on our wedding day. Young, hopeful, liars. I had been played for a fool by the two people I trusted most. The real betrayal was still waiting in the shadows. Linda arrived an hour later, breezy, cheerful. The perfect performance. How was pottery? I asked. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. I was organizing my toolbox on the kitchen counter. I needed the familiar weight of the tools in my hands, the cold steel grounding me. Oh, wonderful, Mark. I'm working on a new vase. You'll love it, she smiled. She kissed my cheek, her perfume. Usually comforting. Today it smelled toxic, like something rotten underneath the flowers. She glanced at the tools. Honey, why are those in here? You know I hate the clutter. The first small crack appeared. Just organizing, I said, snapping the box shut. The sound was loud in the quiet kitchen. Well, organize it in the garage, she said. Her tone was light, but firm, a command disguised as a suggestion. I was thinking, darling, we should really talk about David's proposal again. I froze. Here it comes. The manipulation. The one about the business expansion, she added, pouring herself a glass of wine. She didn't offer me one. I looked at her, really looked at her, the lines around her eyes, the practiced sincerity of her smile. 35 years, and I had never seen the stranger standing in front of me. I had to play along. I had to pretend I was still the simple man they thought I was. I didn't know Linda. Leveraging the shop? It's risky. I tried to act cautious, worried, the way I used to be. That shop is our retirement. It's everything. Her smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second. Then it snapped back into place. A mask slipping, then readjusted. But Mark, think of Sarah and Leo. Think of their future, she pleaded, her eyes wide with fake sincerity. David is brilliant. He just needs a little capital to get his new venture off the ground. There it was, the first twist of the knife, framing my caution as a failure to support my family. It's almost insulting that you don't trust his instincts, she added, taking a sip of wine. Insulting. The words stung, but I didn't react. I couldn't. Not yet. It's not about trust, I said, keeping my voice carefully neutral. It's about sound business practice. You don't leverage a sure thing against a gamble. It's about control, Mark, she snapped. Her voice suddenly sharp. The mask dropped completely. You always have to be in control. You can't stand the idea of someone else driving. She leaned closer. Her eyes narrowed. You're so afraid of the future. You're strangling our present. Sometimes you have to let go to gain something bigger. She turned away, dismissing me, leaving me standing alone in the kitchen. The humiliation wasn't loud. It was a quiet, corrosive acid, eating away at the trust I'd spent a lifetime building. I realized then that this wasn't new. It was just the first time I was paying attention, and I was going to pay attention to everything. The following weeks were a masterclass in deception. I became an actor in my own life, smiling at Linda, discussing repair schedules at the shop, all while the venomous words echoed in my mind. Simple, weak, forgetting things. I watched them now, really watched them. The cracks in the facade were everywhere. The subtle glances, the shared smiles, the way they steered conversations away from finances. I started paying attention to the details. As an egg, I know that the smallest leak can drain the entire system if left unchecked. It was time to check the system. I started checking the books at the shop, something I hadn't done personally in months. I usually trusted my manager, Jake, and Linda, who handled the payroll. Jake was a good kid, loyal, but Linda, I stayed late. The hum of the soda machine, the only sound. I opened the ledger. The numbers swam in front of me. I found discrepancies. Small at first. Invoices for parts we never ordered. Expensive parts for cars we never serviced. Overtime payments for hours that were never worked. Small amounts. Easily missed. But they added up. Thousands of dollars. Gone. It wasn't incompetence. It was intentional. The leaks were bigger than I thought, and they were getting bigger every day. The gaslighting intensified. They weren't just telling me I was tired, they were manufacturing the evidence. It started with subtle things. My keys weren't on the hook where I always left them. I spent 20 minutes looking for them, late for the shop. "Mark, you put them in the freezer, remember?" Linda said, holding them up, her eyes wide with fake concern. The metal was ice cold. I knew I hadn't. But the doubt crept in, a small voice whispering, "Maybe you did." I nodded. "Oh, right. Must be tired." She smiled. A small, satisfied smile. It was working. Then it was my wallet, misplaced, found later in the glove compartment of her car. Then a missed appointment with a major supplier. An appointment I never made. Jake called me, furious. "Mark, where were you? We almost lost the contract." "I didn't know about the meeting," I insisted. "Linda said she told you yesterday," Jake replied, his voice tight with stress. They were planting seeds of doubt, not just in my mind, but in everyone else's, making me question my own sanity, preparing the ground for the power of attorney. But their arrogance was their weakness. They thought I was already broken. They were wrong. One evening we were at dinner at Sarah and David's house. The atmosphere was strained, tense, like a fan belt pulled too tight. Sarah seemed tired, pushing food around her plate. Her eyes were red, like she had been crying. She kept biting her nails, a nervous habit she had since she was a kid. Leo was fussy in his high chair, throwing food on the floor. "You okay, sweetheart?" I asked Sarah. My heart ached for her. She looked so small, so fragile. Before she could answer, David jumped in. The interruption was swift, calculated. "She's just stressed about the new house designs," David said, flashing his perfect white teeth. He clapped me on the back, too hard, the display of dominance. "I told her, baby, leave the details to me. You worry too much." He smiled at Sarah. A cold, condescending smile. Linda chimed in, dabbing the corners of her mouth with a napkin. "Sarah, darling, you're being overly dramatic. David has excellent taste." She looked at Sarah, her expression critical. "And frankly, your anxiety is upsetting Leo. And it's upsetting your father. He's been so forgetful lately." She looked at me, her eyes full of pity. The performance was flawless. Sarah flinched, shrinking back in her chair. I saw the hurt in her eyes, the quick dismissal of her feelings, the realization that her own mother was siding against her. They were isolating her, making her doubt her own instincts, gaslighting her just like they were doing to me. I said nothing. I filed the moment away. The pressure was building. The engine was overheating. I knew I had to protect her, but I didn't know how. Not yet. I thought things couldn't get worse. I was wrong. A few days later, I came home early from the shop. The house was quiet. I walked towards my home office. The door was slightly ajar. I found Linda rummaging through my desk, frantically pulling out drawers, searching for something. "Looking for something?" I asked. Standing in the doorway, she jumped, startled. Her hand flew to her chest. "Oh, Mark, you scared me," she laughed nervously. A high-pitched, unnatural sound. "Just looking for a pen," she said, too quickly. "Where do you keep them?" "In the pen holder, on top of the desk," I said flatly. The pen holder was right in front of her, full of pens. Of course. Silly me. She smiled brightly. But I saw it. The flash drive she quickly slipped into her pocket. I knew what was on it. Old family photos, some outdated quarterly reports. Nothing important. I made sure of that. But the brazenness of the intrusion was staggering. She was looking for something specific. My passwords, perhaps. My financial records. The real ones. She was escalating, getting bolder and sloppier. The tension peaked at a Sunday barbecue at our house. We invited some old friends. Eleanor and Bill. Eleanor was Linda's oldest friend. A gossip who always wore too much jewelry. The smell of grilled meat mixed with the scent of betrayal. David, emboldened by a few drinks, started talking loudly about his expansion plans. His vision for the future, a future that didn't include me. His plans involved turning my auto shop into a high-end detailing center For luxury cars, Mark's old school methods are solid. Sure, he announced, clapping me on the back again. That same false familiarity that made my skin crawl. But the future is in specialized service, he continued, gesturing grandly with his beer bottle. You gotta adapt or die. Adapt or die. The threat was clear. Eleanor chimed in, her voice loud and shrill. Oh, Linda mentioned you were thinking of retiring, Mark. It's probably for the best. You've been looking so tired lately. She looked at me, her eyes scanning my face, judging. It's hard to keep up when you get older. Linda smiled. He just needs some rest. David and I can handle the business side of things. They were building the narrative, laying the groundwork for my removal. In front of our friends, I felt a flash of anger, but I suppressed it. I smiled. Played the part. Maybe you're right, I said, rubbing my eyes. Maybe it's time to slow down. They thought they were winning. They were about to learn that slowing down doesn't mean stopping. Sometimes you gotta make sure you know how to fix a carburetor before you try to redesign the engine. I added quietly, looking at David. My voice was calm, but my eyes were locked on his. David's smile didn't reach his eyes. Exactly, and that's what we're working on. A complete overhaul. He winked at Linda, over my shoulder. A secret shared, a conspiracy confirmed. The casual arrogance, the implicit understanding between them. It was a public declaration of their alliance, hidden in plain sight. They were treating me like I was already gone, already incompetent, already erased. But the real erasure was about to be revealed. The first undeniable rupture came, that Tuesday, the day everything changed. Again, I was reviewing the company accounts, digging deeper this time, following the trail of phantom invoices and missing overtime. I found the main line where the funds were being siphoned. Large sums, moved from the operating budget to a holding account. I didn't recognize. It wasn't just the small leaks anymore. They were draining the reserve, bleeding the company dry before they made their big move for the power of attorney. I had to know who opened that account. I called the bank. I asked for the branch manager, Mr. Henderson, a serious man who always wore a bow tie. I knew him casually. He serviced his car at my shop. Mr. Henderson. This holding account. When was it opened? I asked, keeping my voice steady. 6 months ago, Mr. Harrison, he said. His voice clipped. Professional, but there was something else there. A hesitation, a nervousness. And the signatories? I asked, holding my breath. A pause, the rustling of papers. He was stalling. Mr. Henderson, I pressed. The signatories are Linda Harrison and David Peterson. Linda and David, together. The truth was undeniable now. The betrayal was complete, but something about Henderson's voice bothered me. He sounded scared. Is everything all right, Mr. Henderson? I asked. Yes, of course, he said, too quickly. Just a busy day. He was lying. I knew that tone, the sound of a man covering his tracks. I hung up the phone. The silence in the office was heavy, suffocating. Henderson was involved. I didn't know how yet, but I would find out. It was time to confront her. I confronted Linda that evening. I waited until after dinner. The house was quiet. I laid the bank statements on the table. The numbers screaming betrayal. Black ink on white paper. Cold, hard facts. What is this, Linda? My voice was low. Dangerous. The sound of metal grinding against metal. She looked at the papers, then back at me. Her eyes were cold, dead. She didn't even flinch. The reluctance chilled me. She wasn't scared. She was prepared. It's a contingency fund, Mark, she said, her voice smooth as silk. A contingency fund I didn't authorize? I pushed the papers towards her, with David as a signatory. That's embezzlement, Linda. I knew you'd be difficult about it, she said. Her voice dripped with contempt. You're so paralyzed by fear, Mark. So terrified of change. She stood up, elegant, poised. A queen defending her throne. David and I are trying to secure our family's legacy, she continued, gesturing around the room. And you're worried about paperwork. Legacy. She was destroying my legacy, and calling it salvation. You're stealing from me, I roared, the anger finally breaking through. From the business I built with my own hands. Stealing? She laughed. That same sharp, cold laugh I'd heard outside the window. The sound of victory. I earned this, she said, her voice rising. 35 years I've stood by you, supported you, raised your daughter while you were buried under the hood of a car. She stepped closer, her eyes blazing with resentment. 35 years I've lived with the smell of grease and the sound of air compressors, she spat. I am tired of this small, suffocating life. Mark, small, suffocating. The words hit me like a physical blow. This isn't stealing, she declared. It's taking what I'm owed. The arrogance was breathtaking. The complete lack of remorse. The cold indifference to the betrayal. She didn't just want the money. She wanted me to know how little she valued the life we had shared. The life I had dedicated to her. And Sarah? I asked, my voice breaking. The thought of my daughter caught in this web of deceit choked me. What about Leo? What are they owed? They will be taken care of, she dismissed, waving a hand. Casual, indifferent. Once we're settled, they'll have everything they need. Settled? Where? With whom? But right now, she added, her tone hardening, Sarah is too naive to understand the sacrifices required. Sacrifices. She called this betrayal a sacrifice. Sacrifice. She called this betrayal a sacrifice. The world tilted again. I looked at the woman I thought I loved. I saw a predator, calculating, ruthless, a stranger who viewed her own family as assets to be managed. Collateral damage. The realization didn't bring anger this time. It brought a terrifying clarity. The foundation wasn't just cracked. It was gone. I walked out of the room, leaving her standing there with the bank statements, the evidence of her deceit. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there. Not anymore. I went into the garage. The smell of sawdust and machine oil, usually a comfort. Tonight, it felt like a tomb. I sat on the stool, staring at the tools hanging on the pegboard. My father's tools. My tools. Symbols of my trade, my identity. My hands were shaking, the adrenaline fading, replaced by a profound exhaustion. The weight of the betrayal crashed down on me. 35 years of marriage, a lifetime of shared dreams, all built on a lie. I had been so blind, so focused on providing, that I hadn't seen the termites eating away at the structure of my life. I felt utterly alone, adrift in a sea of deceit. The silence in the garage was heavy. Oppressive, I put my head in my hands. The grease stained my forehead. The exhaustion seeped into my bones. Heavy, paralyzing. They were right. I was just an old mechanic, outsmarted, obsolete, broken. I wanted to give up, to disappear, to let them have it all. But then I saw something that changed everything. My gaze fell on a small, dented toolbox in the corner. Red, rusty, covered in dust. It was Sarah's first tool set. I remembered her, 8 years old, grease smeared on her cheek, trying to help me change the oil in the old Ford. She had struggled with the filter, her small hands slipping, frustrated tears welling in her eyes. "It's stuck, Daddy," she'd cried. I remembered what I told her, the lesson I'd taught her. "It's not stuck, sweetheart," I had told her, wiping her hands. "You just need the right leverage." I smiled, a slow, sad smile. Sometimes the smallest tool, applied in the right place, can break the tightest seal. Leverage. The memory echoed in the silence. A spark in the darkness. The exhaustion vanished, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. They thought I was simple. They thought I was broken. But they forgot one thing. A mechanic knows how to take things apart, find the weakness, and apply pressure. I wiped my face, the roughness of my work-worn hands grounding me. I couldn't fight them with emotion. They had none. I had to fight them with strategy. With facts, with evidence. I picked up my phone. My hands were steady now. I knew what I had to do. I made a call. "Tom, it's Mark." My voice was clear. "Strong. I need your help, and I need you to keep this completely confidential." Tom was my lawyer, an old friend. We played poker every Thursday night. He specialized in forensic accounting. He hicked his pen twice when he was nervous. If anyone could untangle this mess, it was him, and Tom always knew when I was bluffing. This time I wasn't bluffing. The next few days were a blur. Clandestine meetings in Tom's office, encrypted emails, late-night phone calls. Tom worked quickly, efficiently, peeling back the layers of deceit. What we found was worse than I imagined. The rot went deeper than I feared. It wasn't just the company accounts. Linda had been manipulating our personal finances for years, long before David came into the picture. The scope of the theft was staggering, but the real shock was still to come. Tom found the document buried deep in the county records. She had refinanced the house, without my knowledge, forging my signature on the documents. The house I built with my own hands, mortgaged to the hilt. She had liquidated my retirement savings, my 401k, my IRA, everything I had worked for, gone,
moved into offshore accounts.
Untraceable. She's been planning this for a long time, Mark, Tom said, his voice grim. He clicked his pen twice. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. This was a calculated campaign. I felt sick. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was personal, intimate. And Henderson? I asked. The bank manager, Tom nodded. We're looking into him. There are irregularities in the paperwork he filed for the refinance. He bypassed several security protocols. It looks like he notarized your forged signature. Henderson was dirty. He wasn't just scared. He was complicit. We need leverage on him, I said. I'm working on it, Tom assured me. But we need to be careful. If we spook him, he might destroy evidence. The investigation was getting complicated. The conspiracy was spreading. But the deepest cut was yet to come. The hidden truth that redefined everything. If this story is keeping you hooked, drop a like. It was that realization that changed the game. Tom traced the origins of David's supposed startup capital, the money he used to launch his new venture, the venture that was supposed to save our family. It wasn't venture capital. It wasn't loans. It was Linda. She had funded his business from the beginning, using the money she had stolen from me, but it went back even further. Tom found emails years old. Between Linda and David, they had met long before David ever laid eyes on Sarah. The truth hit me like a freight train. She hadn't just supported their marriage. She had engineered it. David wasn't a brilliant entrepreneur who had fallen in love with my daughter. He was a con artist, a grifter, handpicked by Linda to be the key that unlocked my assets. They had targeted Sarah, used her desire for a family, her love, her trust, as leverage. Leo, my grandson, just another pawn in their game. The realization was staggering. The cruelty unimaginable. Linda hadn't just betrayed me. She had weaponized our daughter and grandson against me. I needed more proof about David, something concrete to show Sarah, to break the spell he had over her. Tom suggested a private investigator, a former cop named Alex. Tough. Relentless. He specialized in exposing frauds. Alex took the case. He started digging into David's past. What he found was disturbing. David Peterson wasn't even his real name. He was David Thorne, a con artist with a string of victims across the country. Women had charmed, married, and fleeced. He's a professional, Mark, Alex said, sliding a folder across the table. He knows how to cover his tracks, but he always gets greedy, and he always makes a mistake. We had to find his mistake. The cold clarity of the evidence didn't break me. It focused me. The lingering scent of old grease and the metallic tang of betrayal mingled in the air. Sharpening my resolve, I knew I couldn't just confront them. I had to dismantle their entire operation. Brick by brick, bolt by bolt. But first, I needed to witness the depth of their depravity for myself. I needed to see how they treated Sarah when they thought no one was watching. I needed to see the monster they had become. I knew Linda and David were meeting at Sarah's house again. Sarah had mentioned she was taking Leo to the park. I suspected that was a lie, fed to her by David to get her alone. I parked down the street, the same spot as before, under the old oak tree. This time, I wasn't alone. I had a high-powered listening device. Tom had provided. Legal, he assured me. given the circumstances. I heard the argument before I even reached the window. Sarah's voice, strained, tearful. David, please, where is the money going? We can't afford the mortgage payment this month. My heart broke for her. She was trapped, alone. I told you, Sarah, it's invested. David roared, his voice sharp, cruel, the mask of the loving husband gone, replaced by the face of a monster. Stop questioning me? You're so paranoid. I'm not paranoid. I'm scared, Sarah cried. We have a child, David. Then I heard it, a sound that stopped my heart. A sharp slap, Sarah gasped, followed by a choked sob. My hands clenched into fists. The rage burned in my chest. Hot, white. I wanted to smash the window, to tear him apart. But I waited. I listened. I needed the evidence. Don't you dare raise your voice at me, David hissed. You ungrateful brat. You have no idea the sacrifices I'm making for this family. Sacrifices. The word again, twisted, perverted. Linda's voice cut through the tension. Cold, calm, the voice of the puppeteer. Sarah, stop being hysterical, she said, her tone dismissive. David is doing his best. Then came the final blow, the words that shattered Sarah's world. If you can't handle the stress, Linda continued, perhaps you're not fit to be a mother. Mom? How can you say that? Sarah whispered, her voice broken. Defeated. Because it's true, Linda said, her tone devoid of emotion. You're weak, Sarah. You always have been. Weak. Just like her father. The words echoed in my mind. Now, pull yourself together, Linda commanded, and stop bothering David with your petty anxieties. The cruelty was breathtaking. It wasn't just the physical violence. It was the emotional manipulation. The cold indifference to Sarah's pain. They were breaking her spirit, systematically dismantling her sense of self-worth. And Linda, my wife, the woman who had held Sarah in her arms as a baby, was the architect of her leskers. I closed my eyes. The rage was overwhelming, consuming. The sound of Sarah's muffled sobs anchored me in the present, the raw pain fueling the engine of my retaliation. It was time to apply the leverage, time to break the seal. I began my transformation quietly, methodically. Stopped reacting. I started planning. I turned my pain into strategy. The old mechanic was about to give them a complete overhaul. First, I needed to protect what was left, the assets, the business, my employees. Sarah, Tom helped me set up new, secure accounts. Offshore, untouchable. Linda couldn't touch them. David couldn't find them. We moved the remaining company assets, protecting the business, protecting Jake and the other mechanics. We put a freeze on all my credit lines, cutting off their access to my money. The leaks were plugged. The reservoir was secure. Next, we needed to deal with Henderson, the weak link in their chain. Alex found the leverage we needed. Henderson had a gambling problem, a serious one. He owed money to the wrong people. Linda was paying off his debts. In exchange for his cooperation, we confronted him late at night, in the bank parking lot. We know about the gambling debts, Henderson, I said, my voice calm. We know Linda is paying them off. We know you notarized my forged signature. He crumbled. Fast. He confessed everything, agreed to cooperate with the police, to testify against Linda and David. The chain was broken. Next, I needed more proof, the kind of proof that couldn't be explained away, the kind of proof that would put them away for a long time. I installed security cameras in my home office, sub-low, hidden, capturing every movement, every whispered conversation. I started recording all my conversations with Linda, using a small digital recorder I kept in my pocket. The weight of it, a constant reminder of the betrayal. I became the simple, defeated man they believed me to be, the role I was born to play. I stopped arguing about the finances. I acted tired, resigned, confused. The perfect victim. You're right, Linda, I told her one evening, my voice heavy with feigned exhaustion. I slumped in my chair, the picture of defeat. I'm old school. I'm tired. I looked at her, my eyes vacant. Awesome. Maybe it's time I let you and David take the lead, I conceded. Her eyes lit up, a flicker of triumph. She quickly masked. A shark smelling blood in the water. Oh, Mark, that's wonderful, she purred, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. She touched my arm. Her hand felt cold. You won't regret it. We'll take care of everything. I almost smiled. The trap was set. I set the stage for the final confrontation. The grand finale. I told Linda I wanted to celebrate. A family dinner. Just the four of us. Linda, David, Sarah, and me. And Tom, my lawyer, to finalize the details, I explained, of the power of attorney and the business transfer. Linda was hesitant about Tom being there. Suspicious. It's just a formality, honey, I reassured her, to make sure everything is legal and above board. She finally agreed. Greed, overcoming caution. The pieces were in place. The engine was primed. It was time to turn the key. The night of the dinner, the tension in the house was palpable. Thick, suffocating. The air crackled with unspoken words and hidden agendas. Linda was radiant, victorious, dressed in a stunning red dress, the color of blood. David was smug, arrogant, barely able to contain his excitement. He kept checking his watch, eager to get his hands on my money. Sarah was quiet, pale, withdrawn. She sensed something was wrong, but unable to define it. She kept looking at me, her eyes pleading for reassurance. I smiled at her. Small, tight smile. It would be okay, sweetheart. It would all be over soon. We sat down to dinner. The food was exquisite, expensive, paid for with my money. It tasted like ash in my mouth. To the future, David toasted, raising his glass of champagne. His eyes sparkled with greed. And to Mark, for finally seeing the light. I raised my glass, meeting his gaze, my expression unreadable. To the future, I echoed, a future they never saw coming. After dinner, we moved to the living room. The stage was set, the players in position. Tom opened his briefcase. He clicked his pen twice. It was showtime. He produced a stack of documents, thick, bound in leather. This is the paperwork for the power of attorney, Tom said, his voice neutral, professional, and the agreement to transfer the business assets. Mark. He placed the documents on the coffee table. Everything seems to be in order, he added, looking at me. I looked at the documents, the culmination of their deceit, the instrument of my destruction. The room was silent, waiting. I picked up the pen, heavy, cold. I looked at Linda. Her eyes were fixed on my hand. Her breath caught in her throat. She twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit I had only recently noticed. She only did it when she lied. I looked at David. He was practically vibrating with anticipation, his knuckles white as he gripped the arm of the chair. Linda reached over and squeezed my hand. A gesture of reassurance. It felt like a snake bite. I signed the documents. The pen scratched against the paper. The sound loud in the silent room. It was done. Linda let out a sigh of relief. A small, almost imperceptible sound. David clapped his hands together. Loud. Jarring. Excellent. You've made the right decision, Mark. He stood up, towering over me. We'll handle everything from here. They believed they had won. The fools. They underestimated the old mechanic. They forgot about the leverage. I leaned back in my chair. My expression calm, relaxed. There's just one more thing, I said, my voice quiet, but firm. The room went still again. The tension returned. Stronger this time. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the small digital recorder. The evidence of their betrayal. I pressed play. The sound of David's voice filled the room. Clear. Undeniable. Mark is so busy fixing everyone else's problems. He doesn't see his own life as falling apart. Followed by Linda's cold, sharp laugh. The sound of victory. He's a simple man, David. He sees the engine. He sees the grease. He doesn't see the bigger picture. The silence that followed was absolute. Stunned. Linda's face turned ashen, the color draining from her cheeks. David's smug smile vanished, replaced by a look of sheer panic. Sarah stared at her mother, then at her husband, horror dawning in her eyes. "Mom, what is this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's the sound of betrayal, sweetheart," I said, my voice clear, strong. "The sound of your mother and your husband plotting to destroy me." Linda recovered first, the predator cornered, lashing out. "Mark, how dare you?" she shrieked, her voice high-pitched, hysterical, spying on us, invading our privacy. "Spying?" I countered, standing up. I felt tall, powerful, for the first time in a long time. Or finally paying attention. David jumped to his feet, his face red with rage. "This proves nothing. It's out of context." He pointed at the signed documents on the table. "And besides, you signed the papers." It's too late. He thought he still had control. He was wrong. Tom stepped forward, his voice sharp as steel. "Actually, Mr. Peterson, it's not too late." He picked up the signed papers, held them up for everyone to see. "Because those documents are worthless." Linda and David stared at him, confused, disbelieving. "The power of attorney requires the principal to be of sound mind," Tom explained, his voice calm, "given the evidence we have of Mr. Harrison being systematically gaslit and manipulated, including the incident with the keys in the freezer. Any court would invalidate this." He dropped the papers back on the table. "Dismissive. And the business transfer." David snarled, his voice desperate. "The business assets were moved to a secure trust yesterday," Tom said, smiling faintly. He clicked his pen twice. "You transferred exactly nothing." The realization hit them like a physical blow. They had been outplayed, outsmarted, by the simple mechanic. You can't do this," Linda shrieked, her composure finally breaking. The mask shattered. The monster revealed. "I already did," I said. "And there's more." I looked at Tom. He nodded. "Tom has already filed the divorce papers," I announced. "And the criminal charges." The color drained from David's face. He looked sick, terrified. "Criminal charges," he whispered. "Fraud, forgery, embezzlement, conspiracy," Tom listed, his voice devoid of emotion. "We have the bank records, the forged documents, the testimony of Mr. Henderson, the bank manager, who confessed to his involvement." He paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. "We also have the emails, detailing your plan to engineer the marriage and steal the assets, and the evidence that you, Mr. Peterson, or should I say Mr. Thorne, have done this before." David staggered back, his eyes wide with fear. "And domestic abuse," Tom added, his voice cold. The room went silent. Tom turned to Sarah. His voice softened. "Mrs. Peterson, we have evidence of your husband abusing you. The recording from your house." He looked at David, his eyes hard. "The slap." Sarah was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face, the truth finally setting her free. "You hit me," she whispered, looking at David with a mixture of fear and disgust. "You lying witch," David screamed, lunging at her. He didn't get far. I stepped between them, blocking him, my body a shield, protecting my daughter. "You touch her again," I said, my voice low, dangerous, "and I will break you." He froze, seeing the resolve in my eyes, the strength he thought I didn't possess. The doorbell rang, a sharp, insistent sound. The cavalry had arrived. 2 police officers stood on the porch, a stern-looking woman, Detective Miller, and her younger partner, Alex. The PI stood behind them. "We received a call regarding a disturbance," Detective Miller said, her eyes scanning the room, taking in the scene, the tension, the tears. "Yes, Detective," Tom said, stepping forward. He handed her a folder, thick with evidence. "We have evidence of extensive fraud and domestic abuse." He pointed at David and Linda. "Mr. Peterson and Mrs. Harrison are the perpetrators." The confrontation ended not with a bang, but with a cold metallic click of handcuffs. Linda and David, defeated, exposed, led out of the house. Linda was screaming obscenities at me, her face contorted with rage. David was silent, his face pale and sweaty. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by Sarah's quiet sobs. I held her, my daughter, safe. It was over. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The divorce was finalized quickly. Linda fought tooth and nail, but the evidence was overwhelming. She got nothing. Linda and David, faced with years in prison for the extent of the fraud and the conspiracy, took plea deals. They turned on each other, desperate to save themselves. Their grand alliance shattered under pressure. They both served time. Their assets, most of which were stolen from me, were liquidated and returned. Henderson was charged and lost his banking license. Sarah filed for divorce, got full custody of Leo. The process was painful, but necessary. A cleansing fire. She moved back in with me, and we began the slow, arduous process of healing, rebuilding. The house, once a symbol of my success, now felt tainted, haunted by the memories of betrayal and deceit. We sold it, purging the past. Starting fresh, we moved to a small house near the coast, a place where the air smelled of salt and seafoam. Instead of grease and oil, I sold the shop to Jake, my manager, my friend, securing a comfortable retirement for myself and a stable future for Sarah and Leo. I returned to my first love, restoring classic cars, not as a business, as a hobby, a passion. I worked in a small garage attached to the new house. The work therapeutic, a way to rebuild my sense of self, piece by piece, bolt by bolt. One evening, a year later, Sarah, Leo, and I were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple. The sound of the waves crashing on the shore, a soothing rhythm. Leo was playing with a set of toy wrenches, fixing the furry's swing, grease smeared on his cheek, just like his mother. I thought I knew them, Daddy, Sarah said, her voice soft, reflective. I thought they loved me. They loved what you could give them, sweetheart, I replied, staring out at the water, the vast, endless ocean. They didn't understand that real love, real strength, isn't about taking. It's about protecting. Did we win, Grandpa? Leo asked, looking up from his work, his eyes wide, innocent. I looked at my daughter, her face illuminated by the fading light. She was stronger now, wiser, the naive innocence replaced by a quiet resilience. A survivor. I looked at my grandson, safe, loved. Yes, buddy, I said, pulling him onto my lap. We won. The peace I felt in that moment was profound, deep. The engine of my life had been stripped down, the broken parts discarded and rebuilt, stronger than before. I was no longer just surviving. I was living on my own terms. The sunset faded, the stars emerged, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. Thanks for listening. Please rate our story in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot because your time matters.